Hello, everyone. Welcome to a fresh episode of Ask the Pediatrician Hour. I am Gbemisola Boyede. I'm a pediatrician and I'm your host for today's program. I really want to thank you for whichever platform you're joining me from. I really want to appreciate you for tuning in today. If you are listening to me on the podcast, or if you're listening to me on Fresh Waves Radio, I really bid you a warm welcome to a fresh episode of Ask the Pediatricians. If you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, I also want to say thank you so much for joining us. This program is a program where we bring to you topical issues that affect the health of our children. This program is brought to you courtesy of Ask the Pediatricians Foundation, which is a non-profit organization that is committed to reducing preventable deaths of children globally, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. And we do that through our health education and information program like this online. And we also do it through our community medical outreaches in indigent communities who may not have access to healthcare professionals. So thank you so much for joining us. And remember that you can always send us your questions about any health issues that you may have, either via email to Dr. Gbemisola at askthepediatricians.com or to our WhatsApp number or that of Fresh Waves Radio, and we'll try and address your questions in subsequent episodes. And if you have any particular topic that you want us also address about the health issues of your children, feel free to send us an email and we will try and address it as well. Remember that Ask the Pediatricians Foundation has our Facebook groups where you can ask your questions 24 hours every day, Mondays to Saturday, on any health issues. And we also run our ACP clinics for those who want to have one-to-one private consultations. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And today, I brought to you another important topic that has to deal with the effects of the health of our children. And especially today, I'm going to be talking about accidental poisonings. Accidental poisoning. I mean, this is one of those preventable causes of death in children. And as a pediatrician, have witnessed my fair share of such cases, and I think it's one of the most painful thing that can happen to a child dying. And it's even more painful when these children died, not because of the poisoning itself, but because of the wrong first aid method. I still remember clearly one of the HCP fans sending me a message about a child who accidentally drank kerosene. And then, of course, in Nigeria, especially, we believe palm oil is the solution to everything. Unfortunately, it's not always the case. In fact, when it comes to poisoning in children, palm oil is not a solution at all. So this child was given palm oil to drink and so that the child will vomit. At the end of the day, this child ended up becoming more breathless. And we pediatricians know what is happening, because what that means that the child has now inhaled both the kerosene that was being vomited and the palm oil into the lungs. And the child developed what we call lipoid pneumonia. The child ended up in the ICU, and unfortunately we lost a child. I remember writing an article then that went viral on most of the Nigerian social media and newspaper platform about the palm oil antidotes. Please do not give children palm oil when they drank kerosene or all the things like that. You're actually going to do more harm than good. And so that's why today I'm going to be talking to us about accidental poisoning. I want you to listen well as parents, because it's our responsibility to make sure that our children do not develop this kind of issues. And sometimes, I know we try our best, something will happen. We must know what first aid that we can give to in such cases. Now, let's start by defining what is poisoning. Number one, you need to realize that anything can be a poison. Even some of the things that are not normally poison, but if they are taken in certain quantity, for example, our medications that we take, if they are taken in certain quantity, it can become poisonous. For example, we take iron supplements, but do you know that if children take much of those iron supplement, blood tonic, as we commonly call them, it can become poison to them. Another example is even the paracetamol syrup that most of us think, oh, it's just something we all use. We don't need prescription for that. But do you know that there's amount of paracetamol syrup that children can drink, and it can become poison. So in fact, virtually all the agents that we have in our houses every day are potential poisons. All the soap, liquid soap, all the things that we have, all the household cleaners, all of them, we just leave them lying around. They are potential poisons. And I want us as parents to begin to have the look that whenever you're going around, be conscious of the fact that any of those things that is lying around you is a potential source of poison to a child, and we need to be conscious of that. And poisons are not only what children can swallow through their mouths, though that's the commonest routes by which children can take this thing in, but it can also be from the skin. They can absorb things through the skin, especially the very small babies. It can also be inhaled, through the nose. It can also enter into the eyes. It can even be injected. Of course, those are rarer form of roots, but there's virtually I don't want us to see poisoning as only something that goes through the mouth. It can go through the nose, it can go through the eyes, it can go through the skin, and so we need to be very aware of that. And so I'm just going to give us a few examples of things that could be poisonous to our children, and I'm not even giving an example of things that are sold in the shops as poisons. I'm talking of things that you use in your house every day, but they are actually potential poisons. Let's talk about things that children can swallow. The commonest one, obviously, like in my example, is kerosene. For those of us that live in Nigeria, we tend to cook with kerosene and a lot, and this kerosene are all over the place in our kitchen. And unfortunately, some of us buy this kerosene and we put it, or the people that are selling them, they sell them in containers that normally contain drinks. So our soft drink bottles, our bottled waters. So when the containers are empty, people use them to sell kerosene. I'm actually looking forward to a day where that will be banned, because then children, and this kerosene usually they are colorless. So children see it as either as water, or they see it as the soft drink that should be inside that container. And sometimes children's, their sense of smell. I mean, some of you say, okay, if you want to smell that it's not water or it's not a soft drink, but sometimes children don't smell that easily sometimes. So some of them are so curious, they're so inquisitive, they just go ahead and drink them. And kerosene poisoning is the commonest kind of accidental poisoning that we see in our children emergency room, especially in Nigeria. So this is one of the most common poison that children can drink. Okay, what about all those other detergent, especially the liquid type, those things, the one that we normally spray to clean our table, clean our kitchen and all that? All these things are things that children can easily swallow and all that. Then there are some plants that are actually poisonous. Then some of us even put, we are trying to kill rats, and we put some of these rat poisons on food, and we put it around the house so that the rats can die. Do you know that those are also potential source of poisons to children? And so there are so many things that children can see around the house, and they are potential source of poison, including drugs. Of course, drugs is obviously common, and some of us are not very conscious as parents that these drugs that are meant for you, if the children takes them, they can become poisons to them. And some of these drugs, they look like sweets to the children. In fact, some of us parents actually tell our children that vitamin C is sweet. And I've always said, parents, please never, ever call a medication sweet. Not even vitamin C. It is not sweet. It is drug. And you should not give children impression that any drug is sweet or vitamin C is sweet, because then the next thing they want to do is to go and lick it. And sometimes they will do it when you are not there. And sometimes some of us are so, we're so tired, we're just careless, we just take our medication and leave it there. And these medications are looking right, they're looking, very enticing, like all those candies that children actually we normally buy for them, like Smarties and all that. Your iron supplements, your blood tonic actually look like candy to the children, and the children start to lick them, thinking they're sweet. And some are actually sweet when they start to lick them. It's not every medication that is bitter, and this is one of the reasons why our children can now develop iron poisoning. So we need to be conscious of that. Also, things can on the skin of children, children actually have what we call a larger surface skin area to their body, so they can easily absorb things through the skin. And so it's so important. Some of the chemicals, some of our relaxers for our hair, that mothers especially, we know that when this thing gets on the skin of children, they can be absorbed. Some of this poison can be absorbed through the skin as well. So we need to be conscious of that. Also, fumes of our generator fumes, some fumes, some product we spray, like our insecticides and all that. I know some of us are not very conscious of the fact that those fumes, when children inhale them, they can be very poisonous to them. We need to be aware of that. And some of those products, if they splash into the eyes of children, they can actually be poisonous. So this is very, very important for us. So I think as parents, if there's anything I want you to take home from today's presentation, is the fact that virtually everything around you can be a poison to children, and we have to be conscious of that. We have to develop what we call child-proof homes where our children are protected and they're safe, from all these accidental poisoning. I'm going to talk more about kerosene poisoning. Like I said, it is one of the most common one. In fact, virtually every month, we always have at least one case of kerosene poisoning in the children emergency room, because it's one of the commonest things that children are exposed to. And then and why is this so? Is because most homes use kerosene in those days. A few people use gas, but even those who use gas or even electric stove sometimes always have the kerosene as backup. And some of us also keep fuel, especially those of us, because of all these power outages and all that. So we always have also petrol in the house as well as for our generators, and sometimes they are kept in places where children have access to. And these products, either kerosene or petrol, they are colorless. So children see them, they look like water. So sometimes when children are thirsty, they just think it's water, they go for them. And some of them actually, we keep them in bottles, empty bottles of bottled water. So children are also very curious, because children are curious, they're exploring the environment. They see something in a soft drink bottle, they see something in a water, supposedly to be a bottled water, then they are likely going to be there. And most of us just keep these things in our kitchen, and our kitchen do not have gates, and which means that children just go into our kitchen, come out anyhow they like. And most times we're not even supervising our children all the time. So these are recipe for disaster. These are recipe for kerosene poisoning. And kerosene, when children drink it, even small quantity, it can affect virtually all the organs of the body. For example, when children drink kerosene, they start having nausea, they can start vomiting, they can even have ulcer in the stomach as a result of kerosene poisoning. Another thing is that if they inhale it, because kerosene, those hydrocarbon, as we call them, they can easily change from liquid to gas very quickly. So even as children are drinking, or when they are vomiting it out, for those of us that now give them other things to make them vomit, they actually inhale it, and it can cause what we call inflammation in the lungs, pneumonitis, and this can even make the oxygen level to go down. It can also cause irregular heartbeats, and it can cause headaches if it affects the brain, make them very restless. It can even make them to become unconscious. And depending on the level, it can lead to death. in children, depending on whether it's mild, very severe. So sometimes children can drink kerosene, and if it's small and they quickly stop, well, good. But if not, some of them can end up in ICU, and I've seen children die from it. So this is why it's so important. And the symptoms are symptoms that can occur over hours. So it may not occur immediately. It may be 6 hours later. That's why usually when you say your child has taken kerosene, we want to observe them for the first 6 hours to see whether they are going to develop any of those symptoms. And if there's no symptoms, then okay, maybe nothing will happen. But some children can develop very severe symptoms. They can become very feverish, even just from kerosene poisoning. And that is why we as parents, we need to be conscious of that. We need to be aware that our children are being exposed. And if a child has drank kerosene, please, you have to take them to the hospital. Don't do any home remedies. All these home remedies, like trying to induce vomiting by giving them palm oil, it is the worst thing to do, because you can actually make things worse in the process of trying to make it better. You're actually making it worse. So when children take poison, sometimes parenting that, okay, let's get them to vomit it out. When it comes to things like kerosene, petrol, all the hydrocarbons, don't induce vomiting, because when you induce vomiting, you actually bring out the kerosene or the petrol, the hydrocarbon, and it goes from the intestinal pathway to the lungs, and that is even worse. It can lead to pneumonia. It can lead to death. So please don't induce vomiting in a child who has drunk kerosene. No matter how small it is, you need to take them to the hospital. Like I said, we observe them. Sometimes we may do chest x-ray, because the most important is to check whether that kerosene, is it getting to the lungs? Is it going to affect the lungs? Are the children going to start breathing fast? Do we need to give them oxygen? So usually we observe the children for 6 to 8 hours. If it is luckily most children, because of the bad taste, and that's why sometimes they add other things to kerosene these days to make it not taste nice, so that when children start to immediately take the first sip, they stop. They know it's not something okay. But some children are not even, they can just keep drinking it. So we have to make sure we don't leave our toddlers unsupervised, unmonitored at any point in time. So initially we watch the children. If after 6 to 8 hours there are no symptoms, no breathlessness, we can be sure maybe at least we can have some degree of confidence that maybe it's too mild and the children can go home. But if we start having symptoms, then we need to treat the child. Of course, there's no specific treatment for the kerosene itself. It's just that we need to support the child's body when he's going through all the side effects. So if the child is breathing fast, we need to give oxygen. If we just give what we call supportive or symptomatic treatment, and then hopefully make sure it doesn't happen again. If it is drugs that children ingested, for drugs, we can, if you go to the hospital within the first hour. So that is a crucial hour, the golden hour. So when children ingest poison, the first thing we want you to do is to get to hospital as quickly as possible. If you get to hospital as quickly as possible, in the olden days we used to have some syrup that we give them to make them vomit out the drugs. But these days, most time we just rely on what we call activated charcoal, something we'll give to the child to drink, and it will kind of absorb that drug in the stomach before it gets into the blood and gets into the body system and start causing harm. So if your child ingested any drugs and all that, you have to get them to the hospital as quickly as possible, because we have very limited time to act. Usually we want to see the children within the first hour. Within the first hour, we can still do a lot of things. We can still quickly get those drugs or medication out of the intestine of the child before the body absorbs them, before it starts to cause harm or side effect. So the earlier, the better. There are some drugs that we have what we call antidotes for. For example, if it's paracetamol, there are some medication we can give for paracetamol and all that. Even I think for iron, there are some drugs we can give to, we call it chelators, that can, destroy the effect of the iron on the organ system. So, but the most important thing is that you find your way to the hospital. If you live in a country where they have what we call poison centers and all that, you can call them. But the best option is actually for you to get to the hospital and let the doctors call the poison center, who will give them advice on what to do, depending on how much of medication, depending on how long ago it was taken, depending on the symptoms the child is having. But I think the emphasis I really want to put is the earlier you get to us, the better, because we can do things. So beyond just talking about the treatment of poison, I think the most important thing is to avoid it. We really, children are actually the on the fives, they're very curious, they are always inquisitive, they are always exploring, and they are most of them are in the phase that is what we call oral stage, where everything they pick up, everything goes into their mouth. So the prevention is actually the key. It's the most important thing I really need to talk about, because no matter what we do, sometimes we are able to save some children. Sometimes we are not able to save children, depending on how much of the poison was ingested, depending on how soon you discovered it, and depending on how soon you find your way to the hospital, depending on which kind of hospital facilities you have around you. So, just like every other thing, we always say prevention is better, is cheaper, is safer than drugs. So I really want to focus more on the prevention of accidental poisoning, because I think that is what we as parents need to know. And I want you to remember it by the 4 A's. So there are 4 A's that when it comes to accidental poisoning on prevention. There are 4 A's. If you remember these 4 A's, then you're on your way to making sure that your children do not have accidental poisoning. The first A is to increase awareness, which is what I'm doing right now. We need to be aware. I've just told us in my introduction that potentially everything you have in your house is a poison. Everything, especially in your kitchen, especially all those cleaning agents, almost everything, the soap and children, all these things they put this in their mouths, puts this in their mouth. So we really need to be aware. We need to know about this. Many of us, we are taking medication, we just put it in our cabinets. These cabinets are open, children can open them. Some of us have bottles that children can open. Your children is already able to open bottles and you think it's something funny. Some of us just put them in like all this sachet that's transparent. So we need to be aware, because I found out if we are aware that our children can get poisoned by these things that we keep hanging around, including our own medication, including some of us have our grandparents around us and they are on medication for maybe high blood pressure, they are medication for the diabetes and all that. And we just give them medication and just keep it by our bedside or the table side while we're watching the TV. You don't even know when this 1-year-old or 2-year-old has crossed to that side and taken all the medication. So parents, let's be aware. Let's be very alert. Let's be very conscious of the fact that all the things around us, all the possible things around us, whether they are drugs, whether they are cleaning products, whether they are fuel, whether they are soap and liquid soap and all of them are potential poisons. We need to be alert about that. So when we are aware of that, then it affects our habits, it affects our practices, it affects our outlook. So we are conscious. Also, you have children in your house. I usually say below the age of 5, but even sometimes the older children, some of them are not even, some of them can also get some of this thing because they don't know. So we really need to be alert about that. We need to increase awareness, and that is what we are doing. That's what I'm doing today, giving you this talk about accidental poisoning, because I want all of us as parents to be conscious of the fact that our children can have accidental poisoning through all the products we have in our house. So that's the first A for preventing poisoning. First A, we want to increase awareness, and we need to increase awareness. So that is A1. So it is about increase awareness of the danger around us and of the fact that our children can get accidental poison. So let me show us that on the screen. A, increase awareness. So what is the second A? The second A is we want to decrease attractiveness. So decrease attractiveness. Uh, One of the things that actually make children to get accidental poisoning is because some of these things actually looks very, very attractive to children. So they really look attractive. Look at all those our iron tablets, for example. They look like the Smarties. They look like candies. So children don't see. And some of us have told them vitamin C is also sweet. So why can't iron tablets also be sweet? So we need to always decrease attractiveness. And this is not just even for parents. This is also for those our pharmaceutical companies, those for our those people that are manufacturing products, soap, liquid, and all that. Please let's do it in a way that they don't look attractive to children. They don't look like candies. They don't look like gummies. They don't look like sweets. We need to decrease attractiveness. So we should not leave our medication hanging around. We should not leave them hanging around and making them look like sweet to children and all that. So it's better than all these containers that are dark, that don't look like anything fancy or funny or anything attractive to children. So we really, really need to make sure that all these potential drugs, all these potential poisons, all these products that we use, we want them, to look unattractive to children. So we don't want them to be in all these pink colors, like some of our soaps, they are like pink colors, they're smelling nice and all that. I'm not saying we should not use those, but we need to be aware, we need to keep them away. We need to make sure that they are in containers that don't look too attractive for children. So let's be mindful of that. But the most important thing, because I guess that's may not the second aim may not be in the hands of us as parents, because most time we're not the one doing these things or doing those products, but the one that is actually in the hands of us as parents, which I'm going to emphasize on, is the number 3, which is the third A. The third A is that you need to decrease accessibility. Decrease accessibility to these products. That is the one that we have control. Remember the first day, increase awareness. Dr. Gbemi is the one doing that for you. I'm telling you about it, and I'm sure you are aware now. 2 is part of increasing awareness is why we do what we call Child Safety Week, Poisoning Awareness Week, and all those other ones. And that's why we do it on a program like ATP Hour and all that. But number 2 is to decrease attractiveness. That is for most of the manufacturing companies and all that. Sometimes there's this one nothing much we can do, but you can also make sure that when you buy those things, you don't put them out there where it looks so attractive to the children. But this is where we come in. The third A. The third A is to decrease accessibility. Decrease accessibility. We need to, which is where most of us as parents, our job needs to be done, because most of the time we leave these things out for the children to see. We leave them, we're taking medication in front of children. We shouldn't be doing that. Honestly, we shouldn't, because children see that you are taking this medication. They think, oh, it's mommy is taking it. It must be something nice. They don't know that you are taking it for your blood pressure, you're taking it for your diabetes. They just think you're taking something that looks nice, which is part of second A, attractiveness. So we need to make sure that we decrease accessibility of our children to these things. And how do we do it? Our kitchen should be locked. Yes, children below the age of 5 should not have access to kitchens or where you keep your cleaning equipments and all that. They shouldn't have access to those places. You should lock them, and I mean lock them. It's better you use cupboards that are like IHOP. So first, those that have cupboards that are up and down, for your products, like your cleaning products, your all those things, keep them in cupboards that are high up where their ends cannot reach. Okay, that is number 1. Even if you don't have high cupboards, your cupboards are low down, lock it. Make sure they have keys. Make sure you don't leave your cleaning liquids, your medications and all that. You don't just put them in the fridge. You don't just leave them on open surfaces. You need to, if you are keeping them in the fridge, because some of them have to be kept in the fridge because of temperature, then you got to lock your fridge. or make sure that your fridge is inaccessible to the children. Decreasing accessibility is, I think, for me, is the most important thing under prevention of poisoning that is in our hands as parents. It is in our hands as parents. That one is not, you can't do much about awareness, you may not do much about attractiveness, but you can do a lot about accessibility. Please, children should not have unrestricted access to the kitchen. They should not. Children should not, all our cupboards where we keep things like that should be locked. Don't leave your medication in the cabinets by your bedside that is open, that children can open. You lock it up. Okay? The fridge, if you keep them in the fridge, lock it up. If you have high cupboards, keep them away. Please, let's be very conscious of this. Those of us that use kerosene, please don't keep your kerosene in bottles of water. Okay, don't put them in soda drinks, or the your usual soda drinks. Don't use their bottles as your storage. Okay, don't use your bottles as storage for kerosene and other. Use the proper kegs and containers, and make sure it is properly keyed. Those ones that you even children cannot unturn, they cannot untwist to open it, and keep it in a cupboard with lock and key. All those are our petrol fuel for generator. Please, let's have a gen house that is far away from where children can access. Let's make sure it's a place that is locked away. Make sure it's a place where children cannot access. I know some of us may not have those luxury, but at least even in your, if it's just wherever you keep them, you can see put some kind of covering or demarcation around it that children cannot easily access time. So we need to decrease accessibility of our children to this medication or to these products. Most of the accidental poisoning, when they happen, the parents are not aware, because if you are there and you're aware, you will definitely be able to stop it, but most time you are not there. So but if you are not there and there's no access to those things, the children will never have accidental poisonings. And this information is not only for parents, it's also for those of us that run childcare services. So our nannies, our schools, we need to be conscious of the fact that we don't allow our children to have access to potential poisons. We've started by saying virtually every product around us can be a poison for children, and we just need to make sure that all these potential poisons are not accessible to our children. Is the most important thing, and I don't think I can overemphasize it enough. So let's decrease accessibility. And also, final A is to decrease availability. All right, let me create the banner. Before A is to decrease availability. So most of it is decrease, apart from awareness, which is increase. So you want to decrease availability. In other words, what you don't need, don't keep around you. Okay, if your medication is already expired, you're not using it anymore, please trash it, throw it away, in the properly discard it the way you should discard them. Don't just leave them hanging around the house. Don't just leave them in the cupboards. Even food items that are expired, that are bad, let's remove them so that children don't get tempted. And so if you reduce the availability of these products as well, then it will be fine. Also, another way is that when you are buying drugs, make sure you buy what we call child-resistant packaging. This is something the pharmacists have been doing now as part of this as part of their own contribution to reducing accessibility and availability of potential poisons to children. So they have what we call child resistant packaging, and that's why you see some medication, when you try to turn them, you can't turn them. If you turn them normally, they won't open. So they've done it in a way that an adult needs to do it, because you have to forward overcome certain resistance. Maybe you turn it the other way around, and then before you can now turn it properly. So it's a bit kind of difficult for a child to be able to open that kind of product. So there are lots of packages of products and items now that we have what we call child resistant packaging. So when you're buying products, always look out for those that have child resistant packaging, so that if it falls, even if, let's say, you forget and it's accessible to the children, but at least it will not be available to them. So they use a lot of what we call child resistant packaging. It's one of the things, it's one way by which we can reduce or we can decrease availability. But the most important thing is that anything you don't need, any chemicals you don't need, any drugs you don't need anymore, please don't buy them. If you have them, please throw them away. That will also reduce the amount of chemicals and products that your children have access to. So to remind us again, we've been talking about accidental poisonings, which is one of the preventable ways by which children can die because poison can kill, but we shouldn't, that should not be happening. And the most important thing, we have talked about management and all that, but the most important thing is to prevent accidental poisoning in children. And when it comes to prevention of accidental poisoning, we've talked about the 4 A's that I want you to remember. This is your take home. Number one is to increase awareness, which is what I'm doing today, talking to you about the potential of accidental poisoning and the fact that you should be alert, you should be aware and what to do and all that. So all I've been doing today is the first A in prevention of poisoning, and that is to increase awareness. The second is to decrease attractiveness. Okay, let's not make all these same poisons, let's not make them look sweet, let's not make them look nice to children. We decrease attractiveness, and of course we decrease accessibility. Let's lock away our medications, let's lock away the fuel, let's lock away um the drugs, let's lock them away. Let's make sure children don't have access to the storage area, the kitchen area, all the places where we normally keep this stuff. Let's make sure we decrease accessibility, and of course we need to decrease availability. So if you don't need it, don't keep it. If you don't need it, just lock it away. These are the important things that we can do as parents and as caregivers of our children, so that our children do not get exposed to accidental poisons. And of course, this is what we call primary prevention. So those are the things we do first to make sure the children don't even get exposed to the poisons in the first place. And another thing we should be conscious is that children below the age of 5, once they are mobile, you have to monitor them. We need to keep constant. I know it's not easy for parents because we have so many things to do and all that, but we need this. Things, accidents happen in splits of seconds. They happen so fast. You just don't know, and sometimes some of the things our children play with as well. We need to be conscious of that. I've not mentioned that, like this silicone thing, that's this silicone gel, you do have it put in products so that it can keep those products dry and all that, in bags and shoes and all that. Sometimes some of us think it's okay for children to play with them. Please don't let children play with them. Okay, so anything that has small parts, most of us, they always write it, the manufacturers, they always write it on and say this particular toy is not suitable for a child less than 3 years old. They always write it on it. But some parents, we just feel like, oh, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. The child can play with it. The reason why they write that, though this is not really strictly poisoning, but you see a form of ingestion of some of those parts, and I guess we can still talk about it under this particular topic, is that some of those parts, some of those products have small parts, and those small parts can come off. And when they come off, children can swallow them. So please, when we see our children playing with, number one, let's not give them toys that is not age appropriate. And any toy that has small parts is not age appropriate for a child less than 3 years old, because children less than 3 year old tend to put everything in their mouth. So that is it. So you can't, they are not cognitively developed. They are not able to think that this is dangerous for me to put in my mouth. So they put papers, they put everything in their mouth. So what we can do as parents is to make sure that they don't have access. It's still part of decreasing accessibility. They don't have those kind of products, and then when we have toddlers, let's not leave them unsupervised. Okay, we must always have a responsible adult with our toddlers at every point in time. You must always know where they are at every point in time. We have to keep monitoring them, because these things like accidental poisonings, they happen in seconds. They don't happen over hours, or they happen in seconds. That split seconds that you take your eyes off them, this thing can happen. So we need to make sure all our children below the age of 5, they are constantly supervised. Don't leave them in one room and you are in another room, you're not sure what they're doing. Anything can happen. So please always supervise the children. Let's not give them toys that have small parts. Let's not give them things to play with and say, and you see they are mouthing it. So sometimes I see a lot of parents ask us questions on ATP about children putting paper and they've swallowed it, and they're asking what to do. And I'm like, when the children were playing with the paper and putting them out, where were the parents? Where were the caregivers? Some of us we saw them doing it, but we felt, oh, they're just playing, nothing will happen. Let's take it away from them. Let's give them something different. There are lots of toys that are chewy toys that children can put in their mouth, and nothing will happen because they are made in a way that they can bite on them, but they won't give away, they won't chip off, and the children will not swallow them. So let's be very, very mindful of that. And more importantly, let's not leave our own medication open, exposed. In fact, one of the common, next to kerosene poisoning, that is the next common kind of poisoning we have in children, where children have taken their own parents' medication. And of course, they will not take one tablet. Sometimes parents are not even sure how much of those products the children have swallowed by the time they come to the hospital. And all that is just simple carelessness on the part of us, the adults, because we left those products exposed to the children, and then they get access to it. So even though you are conscious of other things, please be conscious of your own products for yourself, even your creams, even your perfume, even all those things. You have to be conscious of them, because children can get a hold of them, and that can lead to them getting poison. So please, let's be mindful of all things, and let's try and avoid them. Let's remember all the 4 A's, and then we will see that um, our children will be protected from accidental poisoning. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I will just use the remaining few minutes that we have to take a few questions that parents have asked us related to accidental poisoning, and then we can round up. So I have a question here. Somebody say, my 2-year-old drank kerosene, but our mom said it's just a sip. She withdrew it immediately. She noticed he has vomited it on his own. He was given palm oil. He is sleeping. Are we safe? Okay, so this is a common question I get asked all the time. Number one, we've talked about this should never happen. Okay, 2-year-old should not be taking kerosene. Please do not give it to them, and do not keep kerosene in a way that children will mistake it for water or for drinks and all that. But no matter how small the amount of kerosene your child drank, you should take them to the hospital. You should take them to the hospital, because you as a parent, you may not be able to recognize some of the minor features of the side effects of the kerosene poisoning. It takes a professional to pick on that. And so please don't just keep them at home. It's important that you take them to the hospital, and please do not give them palm oil. I have to emphasize that. Please do not give palm oil to children when they swallowed kerosene or they swallow petrol. No matter what else you do, don't give them anything. Just take them to the hospital. I've told you what we will do at the hospital. We monitor the child. If it's still less than 6 hours, we just monitor them, monitor whether they are breathing fast, monitor their chest and all that. So if they are fine, then we'll let you go home. We may not keep you for the whole day. Sometimes we may do a chest x-ray if we are worried about it and all that. But the most important thing is to take the child to the hospital and not to assume all is well, because sometimes parents may not be able to pick up all those little signs, and that is what is important. All right, the next question I have say my wife carelessly left the kerosene in the sitting room where I lie down with my son before going to bed. The kerosene was in ever water container, and the boy took it, though so small. We didn't notice it until he started coughing and choking. Okay. And immediately we gave him a spoon of palm oil, and after 5 minutes, he vomited. The next morning, he stood. He was not taken to the hospital, but it became normal. But after over a week, when he's sleeping in the night, he'll be coughing hard, and during the coughing, he'll be sounding as if he's choking. So, what should we do? Is it the effect of the kerosene? Yeah. So, this is a very classical story we hear all the time. And please, this is not a mother's carelessness only, it is for all of us as adults to take responsibility. So, if as a father you notice that our mothers have left the kerosene in a careless way, please fix it. Let's take responsibility together for our children. And in this case now, this child, like the symptoms of kerosene poisoning can occur after hours, and it can occur over days. So this child, for example, may have developed a pneumonitis, and most children develop the pneumonitis because we actually force them to vomit by giving them palm oil, and they can inhale the fumes of the palm oil, even that of the kerosene, and that can cause inflammation of the lungs, and that may be the reason why the child is still coughing, and choking, and all that. So, even though there's no specific drugs for that, but it's more of a supportive management. But this is actually preventable if we don't induce the vomiting, and that is why we should avoid giving children who have taken kerosene. We should avoid giving them palm oil. We should avoid forcing them to vomit. That is not the most helpful thing to do. Actually, the most helpful thing to do is to just leave them alone. Luckily, most of our children don't tend to swallow a huge amount of kerosene because, like I said, the manufacturers of this fuel, they now add other things to it. So they add things to the petrol and to the kerosene to make it very bad tasting. So most children, once they take the first sip, they know it's not the good thing, and they stop. So which is a good thing. But sometimes we don't know how much they've taken. So that is why it's still relevant for us to take them to the hospital. And especially if the child is now coughing, having symptoms, choking, breathless, those are the children that need to be taken to the hospital. Another question I have here say my child drank in the afternoon. He said coughing immediately. He was given palm oil. The coughing stopped, but now the temperature is rising. And for those of you who were listening at the beginning, when I started talking about the side effects of kerosene poisoning, one of the side effects is actually high fever, and the fever can go as high as 40. Again, emphasizing the need for us to take such children to the hospital, and I hope it is helpful for us. Another question, all the questions I have here are all about kerosene poisoning because, like I said, it's one of the commonest poisoning children can have. Somebody say my son, I think a 6-year-old, took kerosene, was given red oil, but since then he hasn't pulled. We've taken him to the hospital. The tummy is being pressed. He's still groaning and whining, and the hospital gave him drugs, but no improvement. Okay, sometimes some children can have constipation, some actually have diarrhea, some can have constipation from the kerosene poisoning. And if you've been to the hospital, if the child is not better, you can always go back, because sometimes some children may have other issues, and the kerosene poisoning is just the but it's something that is happening alongside, and there are other issues. So we should, if your child is not better after treatment, you should take the child back to the hospital. All right, so virtually every question I have, everybody, the children have taken kerosene, the parents are giving them palm oil to drink, and now the children are coughing or having breathlessness. What do we do? What do we do? Again, let's just emphasize for those who are just joining us to say your child has taken kerosene, please do not give them anything. Do not give them um, do not give them palm oil especially, rather just take them to the hospital. And generally, if the children are taking something, like some children play with battery, they play with something like it's acidic. Okay, so in such instances, you can give them like liquid, like water, not in case of kerosene or fuel. Those ones you don't give anything. But if it's something like a child drank acid or something, other chemicals, you can give them like water or milk. The idea is that it can neutralize or dilute the concentration of such chemicals before you get to the hospital. But what we normally do is trying to force the children to vomit is actually the wrong thing. We should not be doing that. We should stop doing that. We should rather take the children to the hospital. But if it's other chemicals, we can take them uh, we can give water or milk so as to dilute the effect of the chemicals before, so that it doesn't start causing like burns and all that along the baby's either the digestive tracts especially. So that is about the only first aid we can do. But I guess for me, the greatest first aid we can do is to make sure that our children do not even have these incidents to start in the first place. And please try and remember that palm oil is not a fix all, and it's not even a fix at all for us when it comes to accidental poisoning. It is not a fix, and it is something common. It's a cultural thing for those of us in Nigeria to do it, but it's actually a very dangerous practice. I've written an article on the danger of the palm oil antidotes. I think you can check it out on our website. You will understand more about what I meant. And I think I told us the story of that child. That child would not have died from the kerosene poison. That child actually died from the palm oil, causing what we call lipoimpneumonia. So, and that's what kept that child in the ICU for for a long, and eventually we lost the child. So it's very important that we don't let our first aid become even cause more harm than the initial poisoning. All right. So thank you so much, everyone who has joined me today on this episode of Ask the Pediatrician Hour. We've talked about accidental poisoning, and we've talked about what we can do, especially to make sure that our children do not get exposed to poison. Remember the 4 A's. As I'm leaving, I'm going to leave you with the 4 A's. Increase awareness, tell somebody else about it, share this video, let everybody know about the fact that we need to keep our children safe and secure from accidents and from poisons, in the house. And virtually everything in our house that children can put in their mouth can be a poison, and we need to let them know. So share this video, let them know, share the podcast, let them know about it. But more importantly, go around your house today and check and have a look at what you have in your house. What are those things that are looking so attractive, but they're poisonous to children? Make sure you find a way to hide them away, cover them up, just do something. Let them not look attractive to children. Please, let's not call any medication sweets at all to children. And obviously, let's decrease accessibility. Make sure that we lock up our cupboards. Make sure that we lock our fridges. Make sure that our kitchen is not accessible to our under fives. Anywhere, all those things that we normally use, all those products that we know children can accidentally take, and that's the source of poison. Let's decrease accessibility, and finally, let's decrease availability. If you don't need it, don't keep it. Just throw it away, and that is all we need to do. So if you have questions based on this broadcast, or if you have other questions anyway related to your children health issues, feel free to email Dr. Gbemisola at askthepediatricians.com, or send us a WhatsApp. For those on Facebook, you can see. On YouTube, you can see. For those not on podcast, it's +234 905 691 6818. It's +2349056916818. Well, a WhatsApp message will be better. But remember, if you have any urgent questions about your children health issues, you can join our Ask the Pediatricians Facebook group, and you can drop your questions there every Monday to Saturday, and our professionals and moderators will be there to give you an hand. Until next week, when I come again and bring you a fresh topic on Ask the Pediatricians Hour. Remember, you can still listen to this episode and past episode on Ask Dr. Gbemi ATP podcast. You can also watch on our Facebook pages on Fresh Waves Radio Facebook page, and of course, you can always watch it on our ATP TV YouTube channel as well. So, thank you everyone so much for listening, and I will see you same time next episode. And bye for now. Bye.